in government, when figures like this are to be released, various stakeholders look at it, and if they see that the actual figures are going to be very, very frightening to the entire nation, what they do is, okay, bring it down a bit, give us what you call conservative figures. I see what was reeled out by the NBS as conservative, but even as conservative as it is still very, very scary. You may want to say why 133 million, but when you look at the activities of the last, I don't want to say 7 years now, so that it doesn't look like we are hinging everything on this administration. But since the return to democracy, we've been having one failed promise after the other. Number one, you remember the issue with turnaround maintenance for refineries so that we can begin to produce locally, and there will not be need for spending so much on what do we call it now?
Subsidy.
The word turnaround maintenance became very popular with the ODJ administration. Every year there was always these huge billions, allocated for turnaround maintenance of our refineries. Up till date, the refineries are not working. If the refineries are working, probably we wouldn't be importing so much. That's number one. Number two, we wouldn't be spending so much money on subsidy. Those monies meant for subsidy would have been channeled into other aspects of the economy. The real sector of the economy. When we talk about the real sector of the economy, we talk about SMEs, driving SMEs, stimulating SMEs to grow. SMEs are the major drivers of any big economy you can think of in the world today. The US, China, Japan, look at those major, and even Hong Kong. SMEs, small businesses, government supporting them, providing. We should be subsidizing SMEs, right? Their cost of doing business, not subsidizing petroleum products that we can produce. Yes, it became heightened under this government because of a lot of things that happened as from 2012. That January 1st declaration by Jonathan that he was going to remove a subsidy and what ensued after, and then everybody became conscious of what happened. This is just one aspect, right, of promise and fail. And then a particular, the sitting president now telling us that whoever is telling he's subsidizing anything, is a fraud. Subsidy is a fraud. But today we see unprecedented amounts being allocated for subsidy under his watch. These are the things that breeds hopelessness amongst the people. Oh, you told us this, and you told us you are going to fix the refinery, and you are even going to build more. We didn't see the more refineries you were going to build. Okay, the ones that you said you are going to fix, up till date we are still talking about we are fixing refineries, and we are spending so much on subsidies. So this is one aspect of it. The funds that are actually supposed to be used to better the lot of the citizenry are being, I don't know what to say, whether siphoned by the economy itself, or I don't want to say a group of people, so that the NDC doesn't say, oh, it's hate speech against the government. But it's in our local parlance today, what we call audio money. A lot of people are still querying the veracity of what we claim to be paying on subsidy up to date. That's number one. Number two is the fact that in the power sector, no business survives paying so much for generating power. A lot of our companies today run on diesel. Diesel, as at a few years ago, was barely around 100, 175 and thereabouts. Today, go to filling stations, it's around 800. You can't run an economy in that way. So what you have is that people spend more to produce. And because they spend more to produce by simple principles of economy and accounting, they do what they call apportionment. They apportion the cost of production on either the goods they produce or the services they render. Now, don't also forget that between this timeline that I've read, that especially in the last 7 years, how much increment do we have or did we get as regards wages for workers? And taking the benchmark, which is the one we call the minimum wage, that's for the least worker in a civil service establishment. Formerly, it was 18,000. Before 18,000, it was around 9,000. I think we pushed it to 18,000. From 18,000, we are talking about 30,000 that is still in contention up till date. So a bag of rice as at 2015 is that was 7,500, 8,000 is now pursuing 50,000 today, whereas the workers' salary that was 18,000 as at 2015, 2016 thereabouts is still pending at 18,000 today. Only the federal government is paying, and one or two states are the ones paying the 30,000 minimum wage. You can make findings, call workers in various states. Even the ones that are being paid 18,000 minimum wage, they are still being owed. So you are being owed. You sometimes I wonder how families actually survive. You know, then your purchasing power has reduced by close to 400%. That is what is driving the figures. People should understand these empiricals, that it is not just out of the blue. The National Bureau of Statistics did not print this out just to malign any administration or political parties. These are the realities on ground. Income levels are not growing. Expenditure levels are skyrocketing. Our purchasing power is depreciating by the day. So if you have 10,000 as at 2015, you could buy a bag of rice, you could buy condiments, and then you could stock your home. But that same 10,000 can barely buy you a quarter bag of rice without condiments. These are the parameters used in measuring this. And don't forget that the NBS said multi-dimensional poverty. A lot of people are only focusing on the financial aspect of it. It means that so many people now can no longer afford school fees. So educationally, they are poor. That is what is happening. So we are having more and more out of school children. We are having more and more people who cannot take care of their university education. Even the basic education, that is the ones that the primary and secondary. For government institutions of primary and secondary, you see parents pulling out their children out of government primary and secondary schools to put them in private schools. Now the fees there, they cannot even afford. That is, educationally they are poor. A lot of people, how many people can access medical facilities in this country? How many people can access medical facilities? So medically, again, people are so terribly poor. And you find out that a lot of people now have resorted to self-help medically. Oh, you have headache. Rather than go to the hospital to get tested to find out if it's typhoid that's giving you consistent headache, you become a medical doctor. You go to the pharmacy store to buy acetaminophen, the one we popularly call paracetamol, you know, to take care of your health. Because people can no longer afford going to the hospital. Also, people can no longer afford to go to farms. So these are the areas where the government should work on. Enough of giving us macro, our economy, our GDP is big, our debt to GDP ratio is still this, is still that. No, the empiricals, the drivers of the economy, the government should focus on them. That is the only way out. Every other thing the government is doing is what you can call window dressing. So that is my take on this multi-dimensional poverty level. The government needs to focus more, and I don't think it is too much, Prince, to actually drive this economy. It is not too much. If the government is lacking ideas, they should get people whose brains are still very, very much in touch with the realities of the 21st century. Get them employed. Get them to advise you properly how the 21st century economies are operating, and operate in that same way and manner. We cannot be talking about the 21st century. We cannot be talking about farmers and herders clashing. It's an anomaly. It's an anomaly. The money we are spending on subsidizing PMS, for instance, why not subsidize the entire agricultural value chain of this country? If we had done what we are supposed to do with our refineries.
Very interesting.
Those who are livestock farmers can. Oh, sorry, I'm listening.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Just go ahead.
Those who are livestock farmers can go get their ranches probably at a 50% discount, subsidized by the government. Oh, you have up to 100 cattle. We are going to give you subsidy. We are going to subsidize the amount it will take to acquire a ranch by 50%. We will have less of cattle roaming around the streets. Okay, you are going into yam plantation. We are going to subsidize it 40%. When you are going into maize production, we are going to subsidize. Look at Ukraine had crisis with Russia, and the entire world caught cold over wheat. Why? Because the government of Ukraine made, when that thing happened, I decided to study what actually is happening in Ukraine. The government of Ukraine is massively investing in the production of wheat, not directly, but empowering their farmers to doing that, funding them, financing them, and also promoting their exports. These are the things that they are no rocket science. Sometimes some of us wonder what exactly and who exactly is advising our leaders.
Now, speaking of agriculture and subsidizing agriculture, the CBN had taken the program, the Anchor Borrower program or the Anchor Borrower scheme, and saying we're going to give farmers some loans to support them. Over time, we've seen that. But then Nigerians, the farmers themselves, had a problem. They said they couldn't pay back some of the loans that they took, and so the CBN recently has suspended the program, and the farmers are not happy. The farmers are complaining that they can't get money to to go back to the farms and produce. But before we talk about that some more, let's stick with the poverty indices or the poverty numbers that we're seeing. So the federal government's agenda, the President Buhari agenda to lift 100 million people out of poverty, gave birth to, the social investment program where, that's anchored in four clusters. That's the Empower program, the government enterprise and empowerment program, also the national homegrown school feeding program, as well as the conditional cash transfer. Let's look at these programs or these clusters one after the other. Most of them have been said to have done poorly. First of all, the conditional cash transfer. Many have said, look, we don't even know the people who have collected this 5,000 naira for the indigent and, poorest of the poor in our society. Again, the homegrown school feeding program, many have criticized it to say, look, this is just like a conduit for people to enrich themselves. The students or the children who are supposed to get this food do not get them. There's the conversation about children who were at home during the lockdowns, the COVID-19 lockdowns, being said to have been fed. Also, we talk about the Empower seems to be the only one that's doing reasonably well. That's one that people have commended over time. Now, looking at all of this, isn't it time for government to sit back and evaluate what it has done with the national social investment program? Seeing that it's been 7 years now, or 6 years since the program started, the federal government, the president, just a few weeks ago, tried to get legislation for the national social investment program, so that it becomes a legacy of this administration. Now, shouldn't legacies be reviewed and evaluated to see how well they're doing? If the people are complaining that these things are not being done well, shouldn't we sit back to reevaluate and maybe re-strategize? Because if we're spending 500 billion naira annually on social investments, by now it should have been telling on the lives of Nigerians. Ebere, are you there? Ebere, are you with me? Okay, seems like we're going to have to reconnect with Ebere. This is
Hello?
Ebere, are you there? Can you hear me?
Hello, you're breaking. Hello?
Okay, let's try to reconnect with you shortly. The conversation continues. By the way, we're talking about the poverty numbers as we've seen them in the last report by the National Bureau of Statistics, saying that 133 million Nigerians have been are living in poverty. The multi-dimensional poverty report by the NBS. If this is so, like I said earlier, shouldn't we reevaluate and ensure that things are going well? 500 billion naira annually on social investment should have been paying, should have benefited many Nigerians. Ebere, thank you so much for reconnecting with us.
Yes.
So I was saying that if we're spending 500 billion naira annually on the National Social Investment Program, shouldn't it be impacting on the lives of Nigerians positively to the point where Nigerians shouldn't be complaining about poverty? There's a recent report by OPEC that says Nigeria is now number 7 in oil production. With all of this, isn't it time that we sat back to reevaluate the National Social Investment Program?
Okay, Prince, I think this our national social investment program that the president is trying to push or promote. I don't know if it's proper to use this word on this phrase on radio, but we were taught these things in school, being penny wise and pound foolish, right? And then how to identify what and what to do. I think it's a misplaced priority, if you ask me. Rather than look at National Social Investment Program, that could amount to giving a man fish. That's the way I see it as an economist, right? Why not launch a national SME intervention program? Declare a national emergency on SME. Probably we love setting up commissions and establishments in the country, right? I don't want a situation where I'll say set up a commission or a committee and then that will go into another voicemail and all that. But declare this and make it a legislation that, look, this and this and this will be the benefit for any man who is going into any form of small business in this country. That will amount to teaching a man how to fish. Number one, you provide probably free education for those people. If I want to set up a fish farm, for instance, there should be a government agency that should ensure that I attend fish farming trainings for free, right? If it will cost me 1 million naira to set up a fish farm, then there should be a board that should have been in place to ensure that I get 50% of that amount of money in funding, government support, that I may either pay back with little or no interest over a period of time, or this could be seen as government support for me to set up my business in partnership with the government. Probably, okay, we are going to give you this money, add it to what you have. It means that we are having a 50% or a 20%. We are giving you half the amount of your budget for a 10% stake in your company. Right? If you make 100,000 every year, for instance, you return 10,000 back to the government as profit. Government can do this. They have the money to do this. Place a stake. And then, of course, if your fund is in any business, for instance, you are not going to allow that business die because you are looking at your funds. So you find out either this commission set up at national level with state chapters and with also local government outlets where people can go get their businesses registered with the government, right? Why I say local government outlets? So that we will have people who will go and inspect, carry out first-hand inspection of whatever business you said you want to go into, and then carry out a visibility study with you of the successful probably whatever it is that you want to do. If it's probably tailoring, okay, you can actually have the market from your locality, or they may need to move you from the village where you are if you want to go into fashion design to the cities where you have people who are actually fashion savvy and they want to patronize you. You know, these kinds of, you educate people, you don't only provide financial support, you also provide business advisory support for them. You see SMEs will spring up. One SME employs 4 people, 5 people, 10 people. If I have a farm, for instance, a fish farm, Prince, I won't leave my day-to-day job to be monitoring my fish farm every day. Yes, my fish farm is in my house, but I still need to go to work. While I'm at work, somebody needs to be at home to feed my fish. Somebody needs to be at home to tend to their needs. If it's too hot out there, somebody should provide shade for them so that the heat of the sun does not kill them. You know, I have employed one person. I can pay that person. I have lifted that man out of unemployment. And one thing about agriculture is that the value chain is enormous, Prince. Yeah, some people took offense when the president said you either go and farm or you die hungry and stop complaining, right? The tonality may have been very, very wrong and insensitive, but I think what the message is that, look, this is the easiest way out. But you are telling people to go and farm. You are not really out projects that will help them. These things are not rocket science. It just takes the will. It just takes the will.
You know, people would argue governments in defense of governments. That's what the government enterprise and empowerment program should have been doing. That's what it should be doing. Also, we have the Bank of Agriculture. We have the Bank of Industry. All of these banks were giving out loans to people to, you know, get these things going, get their farms going and all. But it turned out that, it didn't work out. Why are these things not working? The federal government has put into place some of these, mechanisms to ensure that Nigerians, are employed. Nigerians are able to, get themselves out of poverty with these schemes. But somehow it seems like, the schemes are not working. What do you think is not working? Could it be that, government has handed these schemes or these programs onto the wrong people? Because if you look at it, the intention is right. The intention of these programs is supposed to be able to empower people to be able to fend for themselves and also better the economy. But somehow the people are not getting anything out of it.
Yeah, like you said, the intention is right. Every policy of government, the intentions are always right. But when it comes to program implementation, right, in terms of policy formation, yes, you see the intention of government very, very laudable. But program implementation is where our problem is. Program implementation. This is when you now begin to see quota system coming into play over competence, over capacity, over integrity tests, and the rest of them. This has always been the issue. You mentioned the Bank of Industry and then the Bank of Agriculture. You want to ask, what is the financial muscle of these banks? When you check the financial muscle of these banks, you now check the need in the sectors they are playing. You actually see that they are more or less handicapped. That is the truth. Any economist listening to our conversation right now will agree with me. Okay, let me give you this instance, Prince. You have in your pocket 50 naira, right? And then you have me, Ebere, you have 2 of your colleagues coming to ask you. The other person is asking you for 500 naira. I am asking you for 2,000 naira. The other man is asking you for 5,000 naira. All of us put together, right, have genuine reasons why we are asking you. But you have only 50 naira in your pocket. The first problem you are confronted with is, who do I give this 50 naira to? Even at that, the 50 naira cannot even solve the problem of this man. These institutions you have mentioned are actually supposed to be bridging the gap on behalf of the government, but what is their financial strength? Probably the BOI and the BOA needs to tell Nigerians more what their financial strengths are, so that we will now know, okay, we don't just say BOA is not working, the Bank of Agriculture is not doing their work. They are actually working based on the ambits, based on what they can afford to do. Because we mentioned Bank of Agriculture, it's like, oh, once you walk into the Bank of Agriculture, you get your agricultural financial situation solved. No. There's so much to be done. And that is why there needs to be more and more intentional budgetary allocation for these things. I, for one, am part of the very few that is subscribing to subsidy being removed. But you know that there's already a trust gap between the citizenry and her leadership. A lot of people will tell you, leave the subsidy there. The ones that they have succeeded, they remove it. Where is the money? How are we feeling it? We are not feeling it. But you cannot continue to have almost a quarter of your annual budget being spent on subsidy. Subsidizing consumption, not just consumption, but consumption of just one product. A product ordinarily you should have been able to manufacture locally. So that is my take on the BOI and the BOA. The intentions of government are right. That cannot be brought to question. But the implementation is where the issue is. Who are you putting in those places to ensure that they drive your policies home? You just see some people, they go to those offices and then they just sit down, they get allocation, and then the whole money just goes down the drain. Okay, let's use an example of one that came on. Let's not use the one that somebody will say is false accusation. Let's even use the one that even the National Assembly probed. NDDC. You remember the professor that slumped when the probing was going on?
Honorable, off your mic. Yeah, remember that.
Yes, you remember the off your mic situation. How many billions went down the drain, Prince? How many billions went into audio mode from live mode? Monies that were paid for the betterment of people, disbursed by government for the betterment of the citizenry. A few people sat down, allocated it to themselves, and you brought him to come and answer for it, and then he was forming collapse. And then the next thing we are hearing is Honorable Minister off your mic and the likes. After off your mic and all that, who has been held to account for those billions? We are just talking about one parastatal of government, or what you can call one agency of government, one commission. We have not ventured into other places. You see just one man, the suspended Accountant General of the Federation. How many billions? So there is money in this country. If the right people are put in place to implement the policies of government, you see that the economy will naturally kickstart. Nigerians are not so very demanding, Prince. Nigerians are not so very demanding. If you can fix power situation for this country, right? If you can fix the power situation in this country for the citizenry of this country, you see a lot of people will go into leather fabrication, shoe production. You see a lot of people, tailors don't need to, I call them tailors, they say fashion design, but I want to see them as small business owners, right? They won't spend the little income they bill you to make those fine dresses for you. They won't spend it again on buying diesel or petrol for their generating sets. They cannot channel it into other productive things, probably expand their business scope. Expanding their business scope means employing more people. You have more people, experienced hands to work with you. You also take in more interns to train. All these people, you are pulling them out of the poverty mark. These things, I'm just mentioning a few. There are so many things that can be done. But what is the willpower? Somebody will just sit down and say macroeconomic indices, we are $400 and something billion GDP, and that. They are talking about GDP, but nobody is talking about the GDP per capita, which is actually the measurement of how wealthy or how poor individuals within your country is or are.
Very, very well. Strong argument you put forward. But, speaking of oil production and the subsidy and the likes, we'll be talking more about that shortly. The federal government, the president precisely, would be supervising the drilling of oil in the north, Bauchi and Gombe states. Oil, there will be oil drilling in that region. By tomorrow, the president should supervise that. But then OPEC is saying Nigeria is no longer sixth oil production or oil producing country. We'll be looking at that and how we're doing as an economy, among the Committee of Nations. I'll bring in a caller quickly and then we would get back with my guest. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, my friends.
Good morning.
My friends, I want to commend your guest this morning.
Okay, Paul.
You see, when government says they are borrowing money to farmers, like the Anko Borrowing program that the CBN is running, you don't just borrow money to people. What are other mechanisms that you put in place that will safeguard what those people are collecting those money to use for? For instance, you say you are borrowing them money to go and farm. What mechanism have you put to protect them while they are at the farm? Give security everywhere that at the end of the day, they borrow this money, they go to farm, they can't even attend their farm, and they'll have to use that money for another thing. They can just be spending on their family needs. At the end of the day, they won't be able to pay. That money is drained. And then secondly, when you look at BOI is a very good. I was very close to somebody that got a loan from BOI to buy a laundry machine, and they supervised it to the core. But at the end of the day, when government say they want to give out money, like all the social intervention, like what your guest says, you will find out that family members are the ones that are in the forefront of collecting those money or that have been given those money. Like you said, even the woman that is in charge, she has never come out to explain to us who are the people that are collecting this money. What are the analysis that they say? They will sit down and analyze.
Hello, Paul.
Like a simple knowledge on marketing says, like a product life cycle. You introduce, it grows, it matures. If it's declining, it's at that level that you need to bring innovation. Nigerian system is not doing like that. That's why, okay, you say you are doing subsidy, you are subsidizing. Even the money you say you are subsidizing. Okay, you wake up every morning, you are not sure of going out to get fuel. You go and join a queue. In the sense of high number of money spent on subsidy. And then all these things, I will blame the National Assembly. The same National Assembly will come and commend the minister, you are doing well. Meanwhile, we are doing so badly. Look,
Okay.
the figures that is being released by this Bureau of Statistics, we are going to see worse because most of our people in the villages, they couldn't go access their farms. We are going to see worse because
Okay,
from
Paul.
there that most of these statistics reduce. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Just also add to that, the IMF is saying Nigeria risks food insecurity in 2023. That's also a source of concern to many Nigerians. Another caller is here. Hello, good morning.
Yeah, Nacho Prince, I greet you.
Good morning, Sunday the Prince.
Thank you. From my own observation as a Nigerian, and from as a Nigerian who has been in this country for over 5 decades now, from my experience so far, when you are measuring administrations, this administration gets it wrong. That is why we're here today. You know, when you want to appoint people, use capable hands. You don't compensate people with position on a political background because they helped me to win an election, because they assisted me. You don't do that. You use the best hand that you have, even if it's abroad, even if you can find the best hands you have in your position. As long as you want to get it right, you use them. I remember during the Obasanjo, people like Erofai were discovered in abroad. People like Soludo, Okonjo-Iweala, OT, and the rest of that was discovered in abroad, and they brought back to this country, and they contributed a lot in the growth of this country. And that is why within Obasanjo time, we're able to pay almost all the debt, and so we are forgiven. And we are doing marvelous work. Then in this administration, it's all about compensating people. It's all about putting people that are now qualified in the positions. And that's why today Nigerians are where we're at. And it's only in this administration I see that the minister lasted for 8 years. And he did nothing. In other previous not able to perform, your release of your job. But here you continue to experiment one minister on one position for 8 years, and he did nothing. You don't compensate people with positions that are crucial, just like a minister of finance. The woman in question, for me as a person, doesn't qualify to hold that position, if not because we are compensating people. And because of the compensation of people, that is where we find ourselves. And Mr. President is not even ready to make amends. And when they ask him tomorrow, he tells he's doing well. And we that are feeling the heat are telling him that he performed below expectations. And that's my worry. Who will ravage this situation we are in 2023? If we do a mistake by bringing a man who will...
Lost connection with Sunday the Prince there. Mr. Berry, you want to respond to some of the callers quickly. You got their thoughts? Hello, Berry, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, please respond to some of the calls, some of the callers and their thoughts. They seem to agree with you on your submissions. What would you say about the scorecard of this administration? Especially that's where Paul and Sunday the Prince have mentioned the scorecard of this administration when it comes to policies and implementation. Like you mentioned, we've been lagging behind in those regards. How would you respond quickly?
Okay, I think it's simple. The expectations people had in President Buhari, he actually let a lot of people down. That is to say it mildly. Number one, and we are not promoting any hate speech. We are giving empiricals here. The last caller spoke about retaining a minister for 8 years, one minister in the same position. There's what we call occupational redundancy. When somebody is in a position for too long, he becomes redundant there. He sees everything as routine. Okay, if I do this thing, nobody talks to me, nobody says anything. No, people are not put on their toes. Even in corporate organizations, they bring you as manager here today, they remove you, they put you in another unit. The essence is to continue to have you motivated to want to deliver in that new role, or on that new role, or in that new position. You may be on the same pay level, you may be on the same professional level or hierarchy in terms of ranking in the company and all that, but you move from unit to unit, you want to deliver. Even there was a time, the IG will rotate CPs. These are just to get them fired up again. No, so when you have one minister there for 8 years, people commit atrocities, they know they will get away with it, nothing will happen, so they just feel, let's just let it slide. That's part of what we have as a problem here. The second thing is, when you look at other empiricals, number one, what was the exchange rate when this government came in? I remember writing an article in 2015 on a column about our exchange rate policy that this government introduced, the huge disparity and where we were headed as a country. We are there today, even though we've not gotten to where I predicted we'll get to, but we're almost there. 1,000 naira, we're almost getting to 1,000 naira. This was way back in 2016. Right? That is number two. Number three, what are the prices of foods and services in the country as at the time it took over? We just mentioned it. Administration on administration, bag of rice, let's even say 10,000, now over 40,000, over 400% increment, right? What was the situation with security? Yes, we were confronted with the challenge of Boko Haram and the rest when he took over, which he promised to quash within the first 3 to 6 months of his administration. Today, it is multi-dimensional, right? We have bandits, we have kidnappers, we have herdsmen clashing with farmers and everybody. We have cattle roaming around the streets. Even here within the FCT, you have cattle roaming around the city centers and all whatnot. So a lot of people are actually left bloodied. If we were to talk about a boxing ring now, bloody faces when it comes to expectations of what the president is supposed to do. But I don't think it's late for the president, even though some people will say what you didn't do since the last 7.5 years, you cannot do within the next 6 months. Government is still government. It takes one policy to begin to change the narrative. And I think the president, if he wants to leave a legacy that people will remember him for, number one, he should do something about the disparity in our exchange rate system. Number two, yes, the CBN policy, I love it. Those who are against it can be against it. Some of us, from the economic perspective, we are in absolute support of what the CBN is doing if they can follow through to the letter. See how much funds are actually coming out from all kinds of pits, seaway systems, and the rest of them coming back, being injected back into the economy. Monies that are supposed to have been driving productivity and all that. But politicians stockpile them for reasons only known to them. So the president's scorecard for now still remains low, and that is the truth.
What do you
let's not overflog it.
I'd love you to quickly talk about the oil exploration and the oil drilling that would be supervised tomorrow by the president. Oil has been discovered in the north. The north would join the oil-producing states. Bauchi, Gombe would join oil-producing states. Kogi State as well, also making that status, joining that status. What do you make of it? Do you think it's going to better the lot of Nigeria's economy?
The problem is the question should be the one we have already. How much is it impacting on Nigerians? That's the truth. Are we going to have another oil well that will be given to one individual to mine and all that? Individuals in this country own oil blocks. I know that's how it is in other climes, and then government take royalties and the rest of them. But will still that money be used for the good of the people? NDDC, for instance, it is monies from oil derivations and returns and all that is used to finance the Niger Delta Development Commission. You saw what people did with, or what people are doing with that. When we have that for Bauchi and Gombe and Kogi, we hope it will not be the same thing. I am always an optimistic person when it comes to the activities of this country. Yes, it is going to improve our ranking. It is going to increase our production. It is going to help us meet our quota, international quota as allocated by OPEC. If really we have oil in commercial quantities, but what will the proceeds be used for? Are we going to see another over the decades degradation of the environment and deprivation of the host communities, just like we have seen in the Niger Delta? Is that the other issue? Whilst a few will be feeding fat on the proceeds of those commodities, or are we going to be seeing something that will look like, okay, since the PIB is enforced, we are going to see how we can better the lives of our people. Let's just believe whatever it is the government is going to do as regards Bauchi, Gombe, and Kogi with a pinch of salt.
Okay.
Let's give them the benefit of the doubt that this time they are going to get it right.
All right.
And from there also we'll move back to the Niger Delta region and then begin to get things right there.
All right, I'll bring in this caller quickly. Hello, good morning.
My friend, a quick one, please.
Please, go ahead.
It's oil. I hope it's real oil. I hope it's not political oil from the north.
My brother.
Now, another thing now is government sign ease of doing business. That was why your guest is talking about SMEs. I just remember now. Government sign ease of doing business. How far have they gone with it? Are the SMEs faring well based on those? And I expected CBN, instead of all those Anchor Borrowers program, I expected them to import more tractors, bring assembly plan into this country, and allow the system work. Thank you.
Paul, thank you very much. Hello, good morning. We lost that one. Try to call back, please. We'd love to hear from you. We'll wrap up in a few seconds. Mr. Berry, we've been talking about the poverty level in this country. We couldn't even touch on the politics, but let's bring in this caller quickly and then we wrap up. Hello, good morning.
Hello, sir. Good morning.
Good morning, Abdullahi Mekano. Please, you have 1 minute to make your submission. Go ahead.
Okay, sir. I'm so interested to hear that the North want to now have the oil in the North because we already had it for many years. But the problem are leaders who are not patriotic. We see the opportunity they have when they are leading this country for many years to have oil from the North. It's not a political oil. We have many states that were blessed with the natural oil from the northern side. And it's something that even the North from the South was used the northern money to discover that oil. But unfortunately, at this moment, the southern people consider the northern people as parasites, people who are just eating from the national cake, but they are not contributing anything. They forgot the history.
So that's why I'm very happy. Let the government and this incoming government try to discover the oil from the north so that there will be a balance in the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Beriduru, your final thoughts as we close in 1 minute, please.
Yes, Prince, I want to disabuse the mind of your last caller. Nobody actually is calling Northern Nigeria parasites. What people are saying is every region should identify their areas of strength and leave it to its fullest capacity. We've heard the presidential candidate, this is not politics, but we've heard the presidential candidate saying the vast lands of the north should be the oil of the north, right? So the northern Nigeria, like he rightly said, have always been known for their agricultural prowess. And yes, that was not, it's not just northern Nigeria alone, even down south. Remember, cocoa does not grow in the north, but it grows in the southwest. Remember, palm oil does not grow in the north, it grows down south, east, south. So, and a bit of southwest, but mostly these regions. So everybody had what they were known for. But the northern part of this country had a bigger landmass, and we're thinking that they should use that landmass more to their agricultural advantage. They are doing it, but we need a lot more. So nobody is saying, oh, now that North has oil. For crying out loud, the world is already moving away from oil into alternative sources of income. Look at Europe now, looking at other places where they can get gas apart from Russia. They are not talking about oil, they are talking about gas because gas is cleaner. It produces less carbon than oil itself. So a lot of people are already moving away from it. What we are actually celebrating that Northern Nigeria now has oil, yes. But Northern Nigeria is blessed with a lot more mineral resources, solid minerals than oil. A lot more solid minerals than oil. Columbite is there. Of course, what are we doing to the Ajaokuta Steel Complex? That's to discover that what we have in Obajana can actually serve the whole of Africa for a very long time in terms of cement. So Northern Nigeria is so blessed, and I don't want a lot of Northerners to begin to feel, oh, Southerners see you as this. No. What Southerners are saying is, let every region develop. That's what the argument I've seen a lot of Southerners putting forward. Let every region develop with whatever it is that they have, and let government support them to actually live out their dreams. Nigeria can be the agricultural hub of Africa, courtesy of Northern Nigeria, just like Ukraine is supplying over 30% of global wheat demand.
Beriduru, what a great place to end the conversation. Beriduru is an economist and political affairs analyst. Thank you so much. Thank you again for being a part of this conversation this morning.
It's always a pleasure to be with you.
And well, thank you to everyone who's been a part of it. We'll do this again tomorrow at the top of the hour 9. Be there and be a part of the conversation. My name is Iheanacho Prince. Keep it with us. Business News is up next.